In this video, I want to discuss my thoughts on Doctor Who so far. Recently, I've become unhappy with Doctor Who again. My number one complaint with Doctor Who so far, is the same complaint that I had with the Russell T Davies era. It's been the companions. Why is so much of the series revolve around the companions? I don't understand that. I don't understand why that's necessary. Alright, for the series to sell, I don't understand why that's necessary. From 63 to 89, the series sold to a substantial fan base, and all of the stories were clean-cut science fiction stories. There was no intertwining of any kind of companion subplot or anything. It's not like it is now, where it's just everything is so blatant. It's just slapping you in the face. And it's just it overshadows what the story is actually supposed to be about. And this has been a common misgiving about the new series of Doctor Who, where an episode will be loosely based on science fiction elements, but for the most part, it's mainly about telling another chapter in the companion story. Why is the companion's point of view so important to the viewer? All right, are we still on this? Are we still so stupefied that we have to have the story told through the eyes of a companion, of an Earth-like being, so that we can relate to the events in the episode? I don't care if I don't relate to it. I just want to watch a science fiction story. For the most part, the last 3 seasons have mainly about Amy. They've mainly been about Amy Pond, And this whole... How many times have we heard The Girl Who Waited? Not only was an episode titled after that phrase, from the 11th hour all the way up until, the last episode that had Amy Pond in it, We've been hearing that, And it's just, it's just been drilling into my head, And I get it, all right? I get it, all right? When she was a kid, she waited for her raggedy doctor. We get it, all right? I got it at the end of the 11th hour. You didn't have to keep, slapping me over the face with it. Why? Why is that necessary? Rory, Rory, I don't... Moffat has done so much with Rory that I just... We can't have a normal companion anymore, It cannot be just... It can't be a Turlo anymore. It can't be a Sarah Jane anymore. It can't be a Jamie or a Zoe or an Ian and Barbara. It cannot be just... all those companions were just individuals that were snatched away from another time, another place, that got stuck with the Doctor in the TARDIS because he couldn't get them back. He couldn't return them to their original time, their original place. Probably the most memorable exit for a companion was when Sarah Jane left. Watch the last episode of The Hand of Fear and you'll see what I'm talking about. There was no long drawn out, tears raining down, kind of thing. There was no need for this long drawn out. You didn't have to make it this big, huge, dramatic. And Sarah Jane had been on there for like 3 seasons. At least as long as Amy and Rory had been on there, Sarah Jane had been on Doctor Who. She had been on there since when the 3rd Doctor was on there. So she had been through a regeneration with the Doctor. And she stuck around for, I think, through the 1st season with the 4th Doctor and midway through the 2nd season with the 4th Doctor. It's just like, it's so obvious that kind of stuff is written for One Tree Hill fans. I used to use that phrase a lot in some of my old videos. And I'll use it now, because Twilight fan, I guess, would be a more appropriate title. That is the audience that they're aiming at, with that kind of stuff. What happened to what happened to this guy? What happened to this guy? The nerd with the glasses, that used to watch Star Trek. No science fiction television series on TV anymore is aimed at that audience anymore. We're just a forgotten audience, It's just like even the most the shows that people like me that I'm a geeky guy. I'll willingly admit, I'm a diehard in the original Star Wars. I play video games, classic Doctor Who, Blake 7, the original Star Trek, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Stargate, Jurassic Park, all of that classic science fiction stuff. I'm heavy into. The Prisoner, I'm big into anime, that kind of stuff. I'm a big geek, and I'm willing to admit it. But my kind doesn't exist anymore. No television program caters to my audience anymore. Because we've just been brushed aside. If you were in the '60s and you in the '70s and the '80s and you watched Doctor Who, you weren't cool, okay? You weren't cool like you're cool that you went to go see J.J. Abrams' new Star Trek flick, okay? You're not cool. You weren't cool like that, okay? You were the geeky guy that looked like this, okay? You look like this with the button-up shirt and the Band-Aid on your glasses, okay? That's who you were when you watched Doctor Who, okay? You were not a cool kid, okay? You were a geek. You were a nerd, okay? And that was fine, you know? It's like the nerds were cool with that, okay? Along comes 2005. All of these old classic science fiction series get resurrected, okay? And when they get resurrected, they get rebooted into this modern day. It's the series is more formatted to please a more broad audience. It's not science fiction that's aimed at a specific audience. Sidney Newman, the man who created Doctor Who, said, quote, "This is a series that is aimed at smart kids," unquote. That's what Doctor Who was. It was a series that was aimed at smart kids. It was like the same thing with Twilight, okay? People who, these fangirls that read Twilight consider themselves vampire fanatics now. Go watch Dracula, okay? Watch Blade Runner, okay? Then tell me that vampires sparkle. Twilight is a classic example of what has been going on with Doctor Who. Twilight is a One Tree Hill story that is set on the backdrop of a vampire story. So, and Doctor Who has been doing the same thing. Okay, a closing time has to be the most blatant example. Okay, that was supposed to be a Cyberman story. I wouldn't even consider it a Cyberman story. I mean, the Cyberman had such a limited role, and they totally ruined the Cybermats with that story. When I watched Closing Time, I felt like I'd watched The Lodger again. That's what Closing Time was to me. Okay, it was a repeat of. It was like Gareth Roberts. He wanted to do a follow-up to The Lodger, but he couldn't think of anything else. So he just decided to rehash what he had written in the previous season, and that's what he did. Another thing that is just like has boggled my mind: plot holes. Oh my gosh, plot holes. Okay, everybody knows that I used to bitch and moan about Russell T Davies and plot holes. Okay, but if there's anybody that's guilty about writing a story with plot holes, Stephen Moffat takes the cake. I cannot believe that I hear myself say that. Okay, that Stephen Moffat outdid Russell T Davies. Was he trying to do this? Was this some secret goal that Stephen Moffat had? He wanted to outdo his predecessor with a story full of plot holes? Because if that was his goal, he's accomplished it. Okay, because Asylum of the Daleks and The Angels Take Manhattan, you know, they're hands down have to be the most littered plot hole story ever written for Doctor Who. Hands down, no competition. Okay, the most obvious plot hole in Angels Take Manhattan has to be the Statue of Liberty. If a weeping angel is observed by any living thing, okay, this is the Doctor's own words, okay? If a weeping angel is observed by any living thing, it doesn't have to be a person, it can be an animal, it can be a cat or a dog or a bird, okay? Any living thing, they turn to stone. Now, how many stray cats do you think are in New York City? How many stray dogs do you think are in New York City? How many pigeons in New York City? How many pigeons own the Statue of Liberty at any given time in New York City? What about people? How many people are in, even in 1930, how many people are in New York City? You cannot tell me that with that many people and that much life, you know, in such a dense populated area, that, you know, there was a window where the Statue of Liberty was not observed by anything, you know, long enough for it to waltz down the street, okay, and stand right next to a building. Did no one else catch that? Did no one else realize it? You know, okay, let's be generous, all right? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, all right? Let's say, hypothetically, that, you know, for 30 seconds, the Statue of Liberty was not being observed by anything. So if you're going about your normal business in New York, all right, and all of a sudden you hear the ground shake like this, and there's a loud rumble, okay, you turn and you look out to the bay, and the Statue of Liberty is gone, all right, and suddenly it's moved. Now that you're looking at it, it's moved, so it's frozen again. But it's moved, you know, it's out of the bay now, and it's standing in the city streets. Did no one notice? Does everybody just keep, you know, minding their own business. Oh well, the Statue of Liberty is stomping on Manhattan now. Oh well, I gotta check my email. What was Moffat thinking? You're never going to convince me that that's not a plot hole, okay? Because there is no... At least Russell T Davies would have shown some scenes of some panicky people running and screaming. I don't care how long you've lived in New York and what weird shit you've seen while you've lived there, okay? If the Statue of Liberty hops off its pedestal and starts stomping down Manhattan, okay, you're going to fucking freak out, okay? It's the bottom line. The Doctor and River in the cemetery with looking at the Weeping Angel, okay? And then the very next scene after that shows River and the Doctor in the TARDIS. Okay. My first question was, how did they get away from the Weeping Angel? Okay, and someone else, when I mentioned that, someone else agreed. We kind of agreed on that. Okay, it's plausible that the Doctor and River could have kept their eyes on the Angel as they backed into the TARDIS and shut the door. All right, that's fine. Okay, so they got away. But what about the Angel? Did they just leave it there? There was no one else in the cemetery. So I mean, the dead people don't count, do they? Under the ground, they don't count as observers. So that gotta call you on your bullshit, Moffat. That's another plot hole, man. You're slipping big time. I mean, honestly, with Angels Take Manhattan, you fell flat on your face. It was a good idea. Don't get me wrong. The Angels taking over Manhattan would have been a good episode if you had not focused so much on making such a dramatic departure for the companions. Okay. That's your problem. That's all of the writers' problems with Doctor Who. It's too much of the story. You put too much into the companions, okay? And then you spend 2 seasons building on character development, on the companions, okay? And then when it comes time for them to leave, you have no choice but to make this long, drawn-out, dramatic exit for them, okay? Because that's what your viewers are expecting, because they've become so attached. If you would just leave the companions at that, if you would just leave them at companions, okay, and just write a good story and let the companions play their role as the Doctor's companion in each story and leave it at that for the length of time that they're on the series. When it comes time for the companions to exit, you won't have to do that. You won't have to write this long, drawn-out, dramatic entire episode that's devoted solely to a dramatic exit for the companions. Amy and Rory were ready to leave. They were ready to leave at the end of God Complex. Why did they end up coming back? That's what I didn't ever understand. Okay, on numerous occasions, episodes would start with Amy and Rory back at home. It's like they were taking a break from when did companions start doing that? For 40 years, the Doctor, the reason why companions were stuck with the Doctor as long as they were is because the Doctor couldn't return them to their proper time and place, okay? It wasn't because he didn't want to, it's just because he couldn't. He didn't have enough control over the TARDIS, to get them to their proper time and place. That didn't seem to be the case with Amy and Rory. It seemed like the Doctor could drop in and visit Amy and Rory, in present-day Earth on a whim, just whenever he felt like it. He could, if they were traveling with him, he could drop them off, right where they left off. And he did this numerous times. Speaking of companions, Rory's father, Moffat, what was the point of that? What was the point of introducing that character? Okay, if he was only going to be in 2 episodes, I didn't understand that. I mean, he looked like he would have been. He looked like he would have made a great companion. Get rid of Amy and Rory, keep him, okay? Because he would have made a good companion, okay? He left a lot of loose ends. Moffat did with the departure of Amy and Rory. Some of the loose ends were unnecessary. I mean, they wouldn't have been loose ends if he had just. Rory's father. What about Rory's father? What does he think? He doesn't know what happened to Rory. Okay, as far as he knows, they're still traveling. Okay, so he doesn't know that they're stuck now in the 1930s. All right, but if you had not introduced Rory's father in the beginning of the season, that wouldn't have been an open thread. It wouldn't have been something that had to be besolved. Now, I'm being very critical of your writing, and I'm in no means a very good writer, but that's something that I would have taken into consideration when I wrote it. If I wrote that story, I would have, if I had been thinking that, what would be a great idea is if the Statue of Liberty was turned into a weeping angel. My first concern would have been like, okay, this statue is always being observed by someone or something. How can I incorporate this into the story, without making a huge gaping plot hole, okay? And you just overlooked it, and I guess you overlooked it thinking that no one would notice, okay? Because everyone else that was watching was obviously too hung up on Amy and Roy's departure. Because I've read the reviews for Angels Take Manhattan, and everybody thinks it was fantastic. They thought it was an awesome story, an awesome episode. I thought it was a waste of film. Okay, it was a waste of a good idea for one. Okay, because it was just like when I mentioned in this video about Twilight being the vampire element being a backdrop for the actual story. This is the case in Angels Take Manhattan. The Weeping Angels were a backdrop to the actual story. They were the angels taking over Manhattan were used as a backdrop for the Amy and Rory departure story. The angels taking over Manhattan is virtually an impossibility, okay? Because there's too many people there. There's too much life there. There's too many living things there. Even statues that are in Central Park, okay? There's pigeons there. There's birds there. Pigeons are birds. There's dogs. There's cats. There's there's people. There's people there. The New York City is called the city that never sleeps for a reason. Okay, it's because no one, there's always somebody awake there. There's always millions of people awake in New York. And for that reason, the Angels Take Manhattan was a complete dud for me. The other episode that was, I don't know if you could really consider Asylum of the Daleks full of plot holes. That to me was more like it was a complete departure from Dalek canon, is what Asylum of the Daleks was. If anybody's watched Series 5, Victory of the Daleks, you know what I'm talking about, okay? And I've seen where several other people have pointed this out. Let's recap on Victory of the Daleks for a moment, okay? In Victory of the Daleks, the Doctor verbally says on screen that the 4 Daleks that are on that Dalek ship are the last remaining Daleks. They're the last ones in existence. And out come the new Paradigm Dalek. And the Paradigm Daleks are supposed to be purebred Dalek. They're considered superior to any other previous model of the Dalek. For that reason, the Paradigm Daleks feel like all the previous models should be eliminated. So now all you have, as far as any Dalek anywhere in the universe, all you have is these 6 Paradigm Daleks. Okay, along comes Series 7, Asylum of the Daleks, okay? The first 2 minutes of that episode, it's as if Victory of the Daleks had never happened. In the Parliament of the Daleks, the Parliament is chiefly made up of the Russell T Davies design of Daleks. And in Victory of the Daleks, the Paradigm Daleks couldn't stand that design. They had to eliminate all those. But now they coexist together? If all these Daleks that are in the Parliament are Daleks that have been recreated from the Paradigm Daleks, wouldn't they have recreated the Daleks in their own image? Then why would they have built up their army based on an inferior model? Asylum was another one of those stories where reviewers were raved about it. They loved it, okay? I hated it. I was more disappointed in Asylum of the Daleks than I have been in any other episode of Doctor Who. Alright? And that's saying a lot considering what Love and Monsters was. The difference is, I didn't expect much from Love of Monsters. I did, however, expect a lot from Stephen Moffat writing a Dalek story. How did this happen, okay? How did Stephen Moffat fuck up a Dalek story? That's what I want to know. When Mark Gatiss can write one. If Mark Gatiss can write a good one, how the hell did Moffat not be able to write one? Another thing that pissed me off about Asylum of the Daleks was, in the media, months before the new series aired, there were stories floating around about the episode containing every Dalek model ever shown on Doctor Who since 1963. They made this big fuss about it, like the original design Daleks were going to have a pivotal role in that episode. And then when the episode airs, it was like they were scenery, is all they were. I mean, there was one scene where the Doctor was leaned up against the big artillery Dalek or whatever it was. The other ones, the one with the blue orbs on them that are were famous during the Hartnell era and the Pertwee era. There was never a close up of those. They didn't even come to life. They were scenery, is what they were. They were background scenery. Like, if I had not known that there were going to be original Daleks in that story, I never would have noticed. That's how obscure it was. Okay, I never would have noticed them if I'd not known to be looking for them. The Stolen Earth was more of a Dalek story than this. And that's saying a lot. That was written by Russell T Davies. Come on, Moffat. You outdid Russell T Davies on a shitty Dalek story. I mean, and how did you? And you set yours on another planet. What was your objective for the episode? If it was not to write a decent Dalek story, what was your objective? I could have enjoyed it more if it hadn't been so much shaky cam in it. I'll be honest. Okay, I may have been willing to give it a better review. I can't enjoy something. I can't, focus on analyzing how the story is playing out when the camera is doing this. you know, just shaking around with me bobbing around the frame like that, okay? What if I shot my blogs like this? Would you want me to shoot my blogs like this? No, okay, no, you don't do that. People don't want to watch their entertainment doing that, okay, either, okay? If anybody's watching this video and you agree or disagree with me, please go read my blog. You cannot escape this ridiculous trend, you know, of making 90% of a television series that's intended to be science fiction has to be romance, and it all has to be shot in shaky cam, and the quality of the plot is unimportant. What's important is that you make a dramatic scene, you know, that makes people tear up. They've lost their way again. Stephen Moffat, just like Russell T Davies before him, has lost his way. And when limited technology in the 60s and the 70s can outdo computer graphics in the 21st century, that's saying a lot. Okay, that's saying a lot for ingenuity. Okay, and that's one of the things that's lost now in the series is like the creators of the writers and the producers of the series, the designers, they don't have to worry. They don't need that extensive ingenuity anymore. Okay, because they have computers that can do all the work for them. This has been a long video, and I congratulate anyone that's been sitting in front of your computer long enough to listen to me talk this long, okay, about Doctor Who. But you're a very dedicated fan of the series if you've been sitting here listening to me talk about it for this long. You know, the bottom line is the series has once again drifted away from what the original series intended it to be. And, you know, it seemed like Moffat ended up kind of going down the same road that Russell T Davies did. Even though that Moffat stated before Series 5 started that he was going to not go that direction with the series, he ended up going that way anyway with Amy and Rory. Okay, say what you like, but the Amy and Rory deal has been nothing more than an elongated Mickey and Rose story. You're devoting 60% to 80% of a science fiction series to a romance. That's not what Sidney Newman intended the series to be. All right, listen, Stephen Moffat and Russell T Davies, you guys did not create this series, okay? You need to remember that, okay? You are not the creators of the series, okay? You are the writers and the producers, okay? Sidney Newman is responsible for the creation, okay? You need to learn how to respect his idea for the series. When you write stuff like this, okay, it's not Sidney Newman's idea anymore. It's yours, okay? And that's if you want to do that, if you want to present your own idea, create another television show. When you climb on board the writer's boat, okay, for Doctor Who, you are accepting responsibility to agree to a certain number of stipulations. All right, there are certain criteria, parameters that your stories must consist of. You know, your stories must be this. Okay, your stories cannot have any of this. They can only have this. They must be, you know, mostly this, you know, blah, 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 blah. I think we can all agree that Angels Take Manhattan, you didn't have to be a smart kid to figure out what was going on in that one. All right. Preferably, you needed to be a One Tree Hill fan. That's what you needed to be to watch, or Twilight fan to watch Angels Take Manhattan. If you're a Twilight fan, you 100% understood that episode, because people like me that have a technical eye, you know, just got pushed aside, you know, in favor of showing a dramatic presentation, you know, and it didn't, you know, senseless drama is what it is, senseless drama. Thanks for watching, guys, and I apologize for this being so long, but, you know, I had a lot to talk about, and I appreciate you sticking around to listen. Thanks again.